Hi everyone. As Ali said, my name is Charlotte Vitak. I'm the founder of My Story. Storytelling right now is a really common word, right? And I kind of find it's a little bit like .com in the 90s. I think it's getting a lot of hype, and that's really exciting because storytelling is a really powerful tool to change hearts and minds and transform people into changemakers. But I think one of the things that we might be missing or lacking out on a little bit is that a really, really essential changemaker skill is story listening. With my project called My Story, we host events on college campuses that create spaces where students are able to become story listeners. They practice the change-making skill of empathy to build the campus community that they want to be a part of. This is a story of how the phrase, "shut up and listen," changed my life and made me the story listener and changemaker that I am today. Walking into college, I was beaming with excitement for what my life was going to be. I was ready for engaging classes, a great group of peers, and I kind of expected all of that to be waiting for me in my dorm room when I arrived. And so when it wasn't, I had this expectation reality moment. What I expected was a beautiful Pinterest-level Olaf cake, and what I got was whatever my Aunt Fran made for dessert this Christmas. So that was kind of disappointing, as you might expect. And, I went to really small schools my whole entire life. So actively making friends was a skill that I never really had to gain. So within those first couple of weeks at school, I do not have a group of girlfriends. I am not connecting with the people on my floor. And after those first 2 months, I feel trapped. I feel like I've completely screwed up the next 4 years of my life. And I end up staying in my dorm room a lot, calling home often, and branching out really rarely. The send-offs from my graduation of "you're going to do great, college is built for you," had suddenly transitioned from encouraging send-offs to these high expectations that I was letting down and royally screwing up. I was letting down myself, what everybody expected of me, and the worst part was I thought I was the only one. I thought that I was the only freshman that was going through this, messing up what I had worked so hard for my whole entire life, what my family was investing a lot of money in, and what, according to Facebook and Instagram, my friends were absolutely thriving at. This went on for a year, and it was absolutely miserable. I felt disconnected, and looking back on it now, I was probably depressed. I came very close to leaving school, but I was lucky to have the support of my family and high school friends to push me back into the ring. When I came back for my second year, I saw it as a fresh start, and I dove in. I don't fully understand what pushed me to come back, but I know that the deeper that I dove into the community, the deeper I was able to give back, and I found that really addictive. My first attempt at diving in was attending every club meeting there was a poster for, even places that I didn't really feel like I belonged. Black Student Union meetings, multicultural center events, women's center events. I would attend anything and everything that I could get my hands on, and I would just sit down, shut up, and listen. And if you know me, that's really not my style. But after sitting and listening to all of these people, I learned so much. And after I organized all of this information, I learned 3 main things. The first is I am not alone. As I was listening to other students in these meetings, I discovered that I was not the only one going through these freshman growing pains. Rachel didn't feel like she belonged because her parents didn't have very much money. Tyler didn't feel like himself on campus because him and his roommate didn't get along. Michelle didn't know what to do with herself during the day because the sports team that she loved so much in high school wasn't present in her life anymore. This revealed 2 things to me. First, I wasted a lot of time passing judgments on my peers. I thought that all 5,000 undergraduate students were aloof, apathetic, and boring. And I don't think that's entirely my fault because this is the only way that I knew them. I'm sure you all recognize this scene from your campuses. But as I listened to them, I learned about these intricacies of their life that I could have never imagined, and we began to connect and become friends. Second, I learned that I am extremely harsh in judging myself. I needed a little bit more grace in my life. I don't think that I can fully communicate, or anybody in this position can fully communicate, how harshly I blamed myself for not knowing how to navigate my freshman year from day one. And what I also learned is that everybody was going through this. Whether you were a freshman, a sophomore, your first, second, third, fourth year of campus, no matter what dorm room you got placed in, where you hung out on campus, everybody had these moments, these days, these weeks or months where they felt like they were not connected to campus. And I found that incredibly frustrating because there were all these people that were so powerful and had so much depth, and we're all walking around completely blind to each other's power because we're all just looking at our phones, right? So this is what I learned first. I am not alone. I'm judging myself and I'm judging others. Second, I learned that storytelling is great for discovering yourself and finding community, but it's also great for finding out that you're privileged. As I sat and story listened, I learned so many things that I didn't have to deal with, and my idea of college as an 18-year-old was completely shattered. I had support systems at home that were holding me up. I didn't have never-ending battles in the financial aid office. I'm a citizen of this country. I wasn't sexually assaulted in my first semester of campus. These were all issues that I wasn't having to go through, but I was hearing these real-life stories from other students who were. And my understanding of white bread, best 4 years of your life expectation of college completely evaporated. And I figured out that there were other people on my campus that needed this community more so than I did. So I'm left with these two things, and I come to conclusion number 3. This is systemic, right? I was pushed to a desperate personal situation that demanded a personal change in my behavior, and my personal solution was to stop complaining and start listening. When I put myself in a position to have a bird's eye view of the campus, I realized that this is what the whole entire campus needed to do. There were all of these groups of people who were talking about building a more connected community, a more inclusive campus for minorities, and a more activated and engaged student body. They had beautiful messages, but it didn't matter because they were all preaching to their own choirs and shouting into their own echo chambers. No matter how hard they tried, white students wouldn't step foot in the Black Student Union, men wouldn't step foot in the Women's Center, and Black students thought that activities run by the student government were for the white kids. So I'm left with these newfound revelations of I'm not alone, which means that I am back in my dorm room and I have this newfound alliance with 5,000 other students on campus, and I am so excited to start working with them. And they don't know that they're in it, but I'm very excited. And I find out that I'm also sitting there in my newfound privilege, which in one moment can cause so much guilt and regret and pain, but in the next moment be so activating for me to use that platform and gift to support others. And lastly, I have this problem that's making me pull my own hair out of my head because I feel like I'm on the outside of a glass wall shouting in. So I'm at the edge of this David and Goliath battle, and I need a tool to project my message because I want to impact a lot of people. So I get to designing a tool that amplifies my voice. First, I looked at what I had, and I realized that I could throw an event on campus that everybody could attend. But then I realized from learning from other clubs that you can shout as loud as you want, but it doesn't matter if people aren't in a position to listen. So that's when I started to recreate my experience in the petri dish of a new event that I called My Story. We invited one person from 5 different groups on campus to share their personal story and explicitly wrote on the poster exactly what I had done for the past 3 months. Shut up and listen. We prepped and prepared, and I braced myself for the possibility that this event is going to be like any other on campus, an empty room with a lot of food in the back. Was it going to be authentic or effective? But when we closed the doors at 7:30 and the first ever My Story began, there were 75 people sitting in the room, ready and eager to listen. Even more, they not only stayed for the event, but they stayed after, until almost 10 p.m. And then we threw it again. 100 students came, then 125, then 150. Semester after semester, My Story comes back by popular demand. And at every single event, students come up to me and say, I realize now that I'm not alone, and I realize that there's more that I can be doing. The first My Story was not just an event, it was a moment when people came together, shut off their phones, shut up, and listened. With every My Story, we strive to turn individuals into story listeners and activated community members. These are just some of the responses we've gotten from My Story event. It was truly one of those events that allows someone like me to become vulnerable in a room full of strangers and leave with the feeling that you were received by a new family. This is a quote from somebody who attended an orientation My Story. There's something about listening to other people's stories that makes me feel a little less alone. This is a quote from somebody who attended at Fordham University. This part truly made the experience a community event that we all participated in, even if we didn't speak. To recreate this experience on other campuses, we have a 3-step process. Consult, mentor, listen. In consulting, we evaluate your campus's need and prepare logistics. Second, we mentor by training the selected storytellers to discover their stories through our story mentoring process. Third, we listen at an unforgettable My Story event that we produce. One of my professors at the University of San Diego, Mike Williams, once said something that sticks with me all the time. There's nothing that a student cares more about than the student coming behind them, and that's the nature of my story. That's why it grew at USD, not just to include students, but faculty and people who worked in the cafeteria, our community partners, and now it's part of our orientation program. That's how it came to the exchange last year and how it flew across the country to Fordham University. A lot of people will say this is the power of storytelling, to captivate an audience, to express a message, but I don't think that's true. Although they have transformational experiences of their own, it's not the 5 storytellers who come up to me at the end of an event and ask when the next one is or how they can help and how they can get involved. It's the story listeners who are activated to change campus, to be more empathetic towards their neighbor, to dig into their community, learn about the person sitting next to them in class that doesn't look like them. It activates their empathy, teaches them this essential changemaker skill of listening, and it changes their life just like it changed mine. Thank you.